The morning should have been ordinary, but instead, it began with a silent act of defiance parked right across my garage. A shiny luxury car, belonging to the HOA president's closest ally, a woman the neighborhood only whispered about as Karen, blocked my driveway entirely. For most people, it might have been a petty inconvenience, but for me, a black homeowner who had already endured months of targeted fines, veiled threats, and quiet sabotage, it was another reminder that I was being tested. What Karen didn't know was that I had already decided this would be the last time she humiliated me. I moved into the neighborhood with the hope of peace, stability, and a safe place to raise my family. My home was my pride. Years of work, saving, and sacrifice had made it possible. But almost immediately, the HOA seemed determined to remind me that I didn't belong. Letters piled up in my mailbox, claims about unapproved paint colors, lawn measurements, even the size of my porch lights. These weren't just rules applied evenly across the neighborhood. They were selectively enforced, and I was the target. My white neighbors with overgrown grass and peeling shutters received no such warnings. But I, the only black homeowner on the block, was fined repeatedly. Karen quickly emerged as the enforcer. She wasn't officially on the HOA board, but she held influence as the president's closest friend and mouthpiece. She would linger outside my house, snapping photos of my yard, smirking whenever a letter arrived. Her car, a spotless white SUV, became a symbol of her silent dominance. The tension grew heavier each month. When my son played basketball in the driveway, she filed noise complaints. When my wife hosted her book club, she called the HOA about excessive traffic. But blocking my garage, that was new. That morning, as I stood staring at her car, I knew it wasn't an accident. It was another move in her campaign to push me out, to remind me I was unwelcome. But she underestimated how far I was willing to go to stand my ground. At first, I considered calling the police, but I knew how that would play out. Complaints from me were always minimized, twisted, or worse, turned back on me. I had seen it before. Neighbors painted me as the aggressive one, while Karen was portrayed as a concerned citizen. So I took photos. Every angle, every timestamp, every detail of her vehicle blocking my garage. I documented the history of harassment, letters, fines, and notices. My folder of evidence grew thick, but I knew evidence alone wouldn't dismantle her arrogance. She thrived on control, and to end it, I had to shatter her illusion of power. Over the next few days, I researched. I found a local towing company that specialized in heavy-duty removals. They didn't just tow cars. They airlifted them using industrial cranes when vehicles were lodged in impossible spaces. It was expensive, but I knew the sight of her pristine SUV being plucked from my driveway like a toy would deliver the message she refused to hear. When I scheduled the removal, I wasn't just thinking about my driveway. I thought about every HOA meeting where I'd been ignored, every neighbor who rolled their eyes when I spoke, every quiet injustice I endured simply because I was different. Karen's car had become a symbol, and I was about to dismantle it in front of the entire neighborhood. The morning of the lift, I called a few trusted friends to watch. I wanted witnesses, not just for me, but for history. The crane arrived slowly, its long arms stretching across the street, and neighbors began to gather. Curious whispers turned into murmurs of disbelief. Cameras came out. Karen herself stormed out of her house, screeching as the workers hooked straps around her SUV. Her face turned red, her hands shook, but for once, she had no power. The crew lifted the car smoothly into the air, hovering above the neighborhood like a strange parade float. And then, exactly as I requested, they transported it, not to an impound lot, not to my curb, but to the mayor's front lawn. I had chosen that location deliberately. The mayor was also a silent supporter of the HOA's discriminatory enforcement, brushing off complaints as misunderstandings. By placing Karen's car there, I wasn't just fighting her, I was exposing the entire system of complicity. The SUV touched down neatly on the mayor's perfectly trimmed grass. By then, dozens of people had gathered, watching in stunned silence. Phones captured every angle: the crane, the car, Karen's meltdown. Karen screamed that it was theft, that I was out of control, that I didn't belong in her neighborhood. But the truth was, she had just been exposed. Not only was her vehicle moved legally, the police verified my contract with the company, but now her pettiness was on full display for the entire town. News traveled fast. Social media exploded with videos of the flying SUV. Hashtags trended locally, mocking the HOA, mocking Karen, and even tagging the mayor himself. What was once my private struggle had become a public spectacle, and for the first time, the power shifted. The HOA scrambled to save face. They called emergency meetings, denied responsibility, and tried to distance themselves from Karen. But the damage was irreversible. Neighbors who once ignored my struggles now whispered apologies, embarrassed by the attention the scandal drew. Karen herself became a pariah, not feared but ridiculed, and me, for the first time I felt heard. My act of defiance hadn't just reclaimed my driveway, it had punctured the illusion of control that had oppressed me for so long. In the weeks that followed, the HOA attempted damage control, but the story refused to die. Local reporters dug deeper, uncovering years of selective enforcement, biased fines, and unspoken prejudice. What started with one blocked garage became evidence of systemic racism wrapped neatly in HOA bylaws. The mayor, embarrassed by his car-lawn surprise, finally acknowledged the complaints he had ignored. New oversight committees were formed, external audits were ordered, and the HOA board was pressured to resign. Karen disappeared from neighborhood meetings, her influence shattered, her name now a punchline. But for me, the victory wasn't just about a lifted SUV. It was about dignity. It was about proving that silence and endurance weren't the only options. That sometimes, standing up means creating a spectacle so undeniable that people are forced to see the truth. I still live in that house. My driveway is clear now, not just of Karen's car, but of the weight of invisibility that had shadowed me. My family walks through the neighborhood with pride, no longer shrinking under watchful eyes. This wasn't just about one Karen, one HOA, or one blocked garage. It was about every quiet injustice that thrives when good people look away. So I'll leave you with this. When faced with injustice, how far would you go to reclaim your dignity? Sometimes the fight isn't about the driveway. It's about reminding the world that you belong exactly where you are.